concept plan. And by the way, you're being recorded. So share our concept plan, how we got there, and really look for your feedback on kind of how well we've done. Next slide. There is interpretation. Lucia, you want to walk us through how our participants can take advantage of that?
Hola, buenos días. Gracias a todos por estar con nosotros. Queremos avisarle que ofrecemos traducción en vivo. Para español, seleccionen el icono del globo o el botón de interpretación que está abajo de su pantalla para poder escuchar toda la presentación en español conmigo, en vivo.
So in case your Spanish is not good, like mine is not, if you want to hit that interpretation, there is a little globe at the bottom. Language interpretation has just been made available. So click there and you'll go into a Spanish room. And then if you unmute, you can come back and ask questions. Next channel, next slide. So our agenda tonight, high level introductions for just a few minutes. We'll talk about the alternatives and how we got here. We'll talk to you about what the corridor, what we intended to look like in the future, have some discussion with you, and then spend a few more minutes on implementation. Probably doing this backwards, but I'm Jennifer Bartlett. I am the project manager on the Dottie team. We're back. This is great with you. Meeting number 3 to share with you what we've got. And I know we've got Councilman Cashman on the line, and I think we have someone from Romero Campbell's office too. So Councilman Cashman, did you want to say a few words?
Yeah, thank you very much. Just very glad to be at this point in the process. Appreciate Councilwoman Romero Campbell's attention, her predecessor before, former Councilwoman Black. We've been anxious for this study for 5 years. Want to really thank the city staff and the consultant team for getting us to this point. Real exciting time for South Denver.
Thank you so much. Thanks for being here, Councilman Cashman. And I saw someone from Romero Campbell's district log on. I didn't catch the who. At least I thought I did. Did I? All right. Maybe I saw that. Okay. Well, and feel free to jump in as you see things happen too. And then of course, I'm only part of this amazing effort. I've got a phenomenal team with me on this one. So Eileen, take it away.
Yeah, sure. My name is Eileen Yazzie. I've been working with Jennifer and City County of Denver and staff and other project teammates to start the study about a year ago or so, and hopefully end the study this month and possibly move forward in the future.
Okay, so why are we here? I mean, I think it's obvious. We're here to celebrate where we are, but there are specific goals. Oh, I think that's Council Romero Campbell's aide who can't unmute. Why don't I finish the slide, and then if we get that figured out, he can jump in. So we're going to talk about the feedback we've gotten, and really this is the opportunity for you to confirm that we've heard you. We'll present what we see Evans looking like in the future that's really based on your feedback, some city foundational documents and previous planning work. And then of course we want your feedback because this is the time to change it before we head into that next phase, which would be design. Next slide. Okay, so where are we in the process? Here, according to this slide. So that would be essentially Q3 2024. We are in October, believe it or not. And Eileen pointed out that we look to be done in November-ish. So we're at our task 3 community involvement. We have had 3 rounds of engagement to this point. This is the 3rd and final. And then from here, it's wrapping it up. It's presenting, it's putting together a report and the documentation and really packaging it for that next step that we hope this study can take. What have we done? It's been a while. I mean, we've been doing this for over a year, which I have a very hard time believing, but it's true. We started with existing conditions. What is going on out there? We heard a lot. We learned a lot on our field walk. We know it's not great, and so basically everything we did and experienced confirmed that. We did a road safety audit, which is a little bit different for a corridor study, but it was important to take a look at this corridor from a safety perspective because it's on the city high injury network. And really, this is a process Denver does to really look at or identify safety improvements that respond to the problems we're seeing on the corridor. And this ties to one of our goals, which is to get Evans off the high injury network. We do not want this to be a roadway on which people die. So that was number 2. We looked at different options. So, you know, bus only, bike facilities, I don't, 2 or 3, and we'll walk through them. But basically looking at what's feasible, and then have that inform kind of what our next steps are. 2 prior phases of public engagement, what's out there from the public perspective, and then kind of are we on the right track? We did a draft concept, which we'll share parts of. And then this is an important piece, number 6. This project doesn't happen in a vacuum. There are lots of projects going on that inform and that we will inform. So the bike update is an example. They're doing a citywide project. We're focused on our corridor, but what we hear and what you tell us matters insofar as how, let's say, the bike network evolves. So we've done extensive engagement and alignment with other agencies, other projects, and we'll continue through the end. And it will pick up as the design phase picks up too. So alternatives and vision development is a really important key sort of stop in our plan development. Next slide. There's 3 steps, and this is standard across DOTI. We didn't come up with anything, you know, fantastical, although it's a pretty great process. We're looking at screening alternatives. So, you know, can we remove a lane, turn it into transit? What about parking? What about bike? And based on the conditions we saw and the future, none of those really worked. And in looking at other plans, which we do in the very beginning, it wasn't identified for those. And so we sort of knew what the answer was, but we had to go through the process. There's another document that we use, the Complete Streets Guidelines, that really sets the tone for what we want our streets and roads to look like. And so it turns out that based on the other ones not being feasible, that complete street application became the one that really set the framework for what we did next. So knowing that, step 2 was that preferred alternative. And this is where we looked at the guidance. What does the guidance tell us we want the street to look like? What does right of way look like? We know it's pretty tough out there. Utilities, complicated, right? But also a goal. And then what are those elements of complete streets that we know are important and how do they fit? And so really it's how do all those things fit together to help us come up with step 3, which we will reveal. So this is our preferred corridor vision. And then we'll follow it up at the end with some slides about implementation, because I know what y'all really want to know is what happens next. Ta-da! This is our framework. And so the Evans Avenue is identified as a mixed-use arterial, which is a nice way of saying there's a lot going on. We've got commercial, we've got residential, we move a lot of traffic. And so what can we do to support all of that and have a roadway that works for as many possible different modes, right? So bike, ped, car. So what do we look at? Vehicle lane. And Eileen will talk about this, but turns out our lanes are substandard. So it's not sexy, it's not even exciting, but bringing our lanes up to standard. Looking at how transit functions in our corridor. And if we're not taking a lane, it's still an important transit corridor. So how do we make it better? And maybe it's signal, maybe it's not infrastructure. Sidewalks, pretty rough out there and certainly not wide enough. And so you see down below, sorry, I'm seeing the, you see down below in the table, kind of our guidance. And so sidewalk widths, minimum 8 feet, and then preferred 10. And so what the guidance tells us as we go ahead and construct this thing is that we really need to be shooting for 10 feet sidewalk, 10-foot sidewalk. Amenity zones, important as buffer, also important place for trees. So this also tells us we should have an amenity zone wherever possible and gives us guidance on the width of that. And then medians. So that varies a little bit depending on where we are and also what we can do on the corridor. But all of these elements in this list were things we worked on including in response to all the feedback in our concept. I love that people are still showing up. This is so good. Okay, so phase 2, thinking a lot of you were at this meeting in person. It was great. We heard some key themes loud and clear. We had a preferred alternative, which really met those guidelines wherever possible. And we're stressing preferred and not minimum, right? So it's really easy sometimes for us to fall back on the minimum. And the idea here is preferred alternative, maximum wherever possible. Minimum alternative not is seen as not enough, which we know. But in some cases, that's all we can do. The situation on the corridor is difficult with buildings the way they stand. And so maybe future opportunities resolve some of those, but you will see places where it is not the preferred cross-section. It is something less than. And then the hybrid, which was where we could do maybe the preferred on one side, but maybe the minimum on the other, because we didn't have room. And that was deemed as acceptable to most of the folks who were there. And then, so what did we do? Like, the takeaways that influenced our analysis and development. And the point of this is really to show how things travel through from the beginning of the process to where we are now. Because what we want to do is always tie back to what we heard and what is important. So aligning with Denver's Vision Zero goal, safety is critical on this corridor. For the city, getting it off the high injury network. For the community, slowing folks down, feeling safe, walking along it and across it. For the community, it's enhancing accessibility to all modes. It turns out not everyone along the corridor drives. We get a lot of through, but we also get a lot of folks who live on, and they don't have cars necessarily. So that means we need to elevate bus, right? So for the folks that live there, have a different perspective than the folks that travel through. So what does that mean for us? Paying attention to bus stops. I don't know how many of you walk the corridor. There are only maybe 3 of the over a dozen that are dignified, for lack of better, right? And so it's really an opportunity to improve bus stops along the corridor and really highlight, improve just transit access. There are no parks or amenities nearby. And there is a goal to have Parker, I think it's a park within 10 minutes. And so there's an opportunity with a green space to the north that could be something long-term. Roadway feels unsafe for driving. Yeah, well, some of the lanes are not even 9 feet wide. Cars are bigger, buses are bigger. It doesn't feel good to be making left turns from some of those intersections. So we've got things to work on, really just to bring it up to a place where even drivers feel safe. And I don't mean safe enough to speed. I mean safe enough to like not dread it. And then it's visually unappealing, not a pretty street. Probably not Denver's most unattractive. There are a few of those, but it's in the middle. Like, we know it is not awesome. There's not a there, it's a through. And so, you know, places to go along the corridor, maybe identifying over time things that show like where we are. And so maybe Evans corridor becomes a place. And then it's places to go along the corridor as well. And then utilities buried. I know Councilman Cashman, this is a big thing. Clearly, it's been important from the Southeast Area Plan to now. It requires right of way. And so once we have the right of way, the options really open up. And now I think you get to listen to Eileen take us through the proposed vision concept. And I'm so excited to share this with you guys.
Okay, I just found my unmute button. Before we hop into the proposed corridor vision, I wanted to note, I saw that there was one question in the chat already, and I would like to answer that before we hop in. I will also note, as Nora put in the chat, right now, I'm gonna go into some overarching design themes throughout the corridor, and then we're gonna walk through the corridor in 5 sections, and through each section, we will have a time to pause to ask questions, answer questions, discuss. So there'll be 5 times that we break to open it up for discussion and questions and answers. The question that's posted in the chat right now is, how does this corridor project relate to the current ongoing legislative rezoning for the near southeast area plan, specifically the design standards on the right of way? I'll start and see if Jennifer wants to add to this. So regardless of the zoning application, right, of the private properties and the properties adjacent to the corridor, when it develops or redevelops, or what other term is used, that development is required to meet us into the street and to follow the complete streets guidelines. So the previous slide that had that complete street application, because the designation of that arterial, Alan, do you mind going back to that complete street slide, that cross section? So regardless what happens of the zoning of the property, Evans is still staying a mixed use arterial. So these requirements at the bottom of, we actually, Denver requires the maximum, or I'm sorry, the preferred areas. So it's required when development happens that there is a 10-foot sidewalk. The amenity zone is 8 feet. The outside, and then you can see the different lanes, the vehicle lanes and things like that. So also too, that right of way is given to City County of Denver for the sidewalk amenity zone. So that becomes theirs as well. And that, there's actually a lot of good examples along the corridor of how it's happening. So the, let's see, east of I-25, the Carvana on the south side, the gas station on the south side, those again went through development. Regardless of how they're zoned, they have to meet the complete streets guidelines. The new development at Monaco on Evans, again, that's meeting the complete streets guidelines and the preferred dimensions. So as development happens, regardless of the zoning, the complete street applications have to be adhered to. All right, we're going to dive in now to the proposed corridor vision concept. Next slide. So as Jennifer mentioned in the previous slide, there's a lot of knowns and feedback we got from the community, which really actually helped establish the goals and objectives. So we really use these throughout developing, going through the alternatives process, and used, I would say, as that foundation when we started looking at how to better design and re-envision the corridor. Next slide. So on that, this section of the presentation, we're going to go through some, again, what do these design elements look like? And so you see items on the left side, these icons, they have pedestrian improvements, new crossing, green amenity zones, signal timing and upgrades, bus stop, and lane improvements, raised medians. And you also see the yellow, green, and purple. And if you're colorblind, again, you're going to see kind of new information about wider sidewalks, a green amenity zone, and as well as a median. That's visually what you'll be seeing as we go through the corridor. Next slide. So when we cue in and we say pedestrian improvements, really we're talking about addressing the existing problem. Sidewalk widths, they're inconsistent along the corridor, not up to standards. Practically the entire corridor is non-ADA compliant unless Denver and or redevelopment has come in. They're in a state of disrepair as well, and lots of driveways. So the proposed treatments, we're really looking to have that curb ADA compliance as well as the sidewalk improvements. And one thing to note as we go through the corridor that Jennifer explained, we have right-of-way constraints. And on that, as much as we would like to take one brush and say, oh, we can put a 10-foot sidewalk along the whole corridor, we do need to be responsive to our constraints. So the sidewalk widths throughout the corridor that we're recommending vary from 8 feet to 10 feet. Next slide. So new crossing improvements. This is addressing the existing problem of there's no safe mid-block crossings for pedestrians and bicyclists on the corridor. And on that specifically, one of the areas that we have found is what Jennifer mentioned is our bus riders. You go into work or you're going to the grocery store, you're going to an appointment westbound, you actually don't have a safe place to get across eastbound to head into the other bus. So on that, we're looking to add in some new crossing improvements to respond to the need of people needing to get across the street. Next slide. The green amenity zone improvements, as was previously mentioned, one of the things in the existing conditions, this is actually one of the hottest streets in Denver due to the lack of tree canopy. The amenity zone, again, it is non-existent unless it's gone through development or redevelopment, as well as a lot of corridor parking at that's in the adjacent property. So again, we're recommending to put the amenity zones in, number one, and then also we do have stormwater drains throughout the corridor, which allows us to look at and put in greenscape. And so again, depending on the different intake of stormwater, there's different levels that we can do. So there's level of green, where we can do a full capture of stormwater and we can have trees in there. And then we get down to the level of 3, while there's no trees allowed, just because it's constrained from the flow of water, yet there still is existing land that would be landscape in there. Next slide. Bus stop and bus lane improvements. As Jennifer mentioned, the majority of bus stops along this corridor, one, don't even have a safe waiting zone, that there's not even an ADA compliant or a waiting area that meets the Denver and RTD standard, as well as the lack of amenities. We're recommending, one, that we put in the required dimensions for an acceptable bus stop, and recommending amenities as well. And there are sections in this corridor that we'll get to that we are recommending a dedicated bus lane. It's when the street widens out to 3 lanes. And I'll go through that in a little bit. There's just a lack of vehicle and pretty much open space to prioritize buses moving faster. Next slide. Medians access management. This picture is just 2 miles south on Hamden. And one of the things is that putting in medians on a street like Evans, it's actually a very high proven counter safety measure. So we have a high amount of, we have a huge existing crash history, which a high amount of broadside crashes. So kind of that T-bone and then head-on crashes, as well as, again, there's a lot of driveways. So you have this full access, and that also results in a lack of safe space for people waiting to continue to walk. So putting in these medians, it really makes it a safer street. And on that, part of the overall recommendation of the corridor is to put in medians. Next slide. All right, our first segment we're going to go to, in this first segment, hopefully you'll get comfortable with the cadence. So the first slide of this segment, Colorado I-25, is high-level information about what we're doing. And then we'll walk through, I would say, from the helicopter view, if you're in a helicopter or a low-flying airplane, you're looking down, what it would look like from that. And then we'll also show a 3-dimensional kind of, if you're on the ground looking at the corridor, what it looks like. When it comes to pedestrian improvements, there's a mix of the minimum 8 feet and preferred sidewalk, which is 10 feet of those dimensions, as well as the amenity zone. There is a recommendation to put in a new hawk signal at Ash Street. And what that is a signalized crossing. It remains dark until a pedestrian pushes it, and it's actuated immediately, and it goes to blinking and then a hard red so people can cross safely. In this corridor, in this section, I-25 to Colorado, there is space and stormwater to have a level of 4 green. So again, in that we have the greenscape with trees. Also, we're looking for signal timing upgrades at all signals at Colorado, Birch, and I-25. It is also recognized that that at Birch, the signal needs to be upgraded. Bus only, we are recommending that there is a bus only lane on the westbound side of Evans between I-25 and Birch. We are proposing an option. So what this means is really it's an option that could happen in the future. It's really that we extend that bus lane only all the way to Colorado. And that's really related to the Colorado Boulevard Bus Rapid Transit project that CDOT is doing. So while they're doing their project and they're in an earlier stage than we are, but if they need that space to have a bus only to support reliable and efficient transit operations, we have the option to provide that to them. And then 2 is that in this section, as well as the rest of the segment, there'll be new medians and access management. Next slide. So starting at Colorado, this area, it shows that we have, again, an improved amenity zone. We're also removing a westbound lane here. So on that, all the way from I-25 to Colorado, the westbound third lane has very, very low volumes of vehicles traveling through. We found that the majority of vehicles heading westbound Evans, they're heading north to I-25 and south to I-25. We see a vehicle drop of about 10,000 vehicles at that intersection. So that third lane in the westbound direction is not needed. So we are recommending to remove it. And essentially we would then turn over the space back to the pedestrian area. So we have wider sidewalks and an amenity zone. Next slide. This is a second option, as I mentioned, that if we needed to keep that third lane for bus rapid transit, we have that space available. Again, the vehicles we drop off, about 10,000 vehicles head north or south on I-25. The third vehicle lane is really not needed. Also in this section, you'll see at Ash, there's a new crosswalk. This would be the Hawk signal where we would place it. And you can see as well with some medians in the middle of the road. Next slide. All right, Birch. So one thing it is noted, this is the technical transportation term. We say it's an offset street, does not connect. So you have to make a left to make a right to actually go north or south on Birch Street. And so they're disconnected. We recognize, and also too, we recognize that Birch is a bicycle corridor. And we, in totality, there's two options that we realize or can realize. Option one is to keep the two streets disjointed. And then option two is actually to join them. So and then in option one, we also recognize the need for safe crossings for bicyclists. If you go to the next slide. So one thing that we are still doing right now, so on the left side, it says 1A. That's the current design idea of how bicyclists would cross Evans. It's a bit, it's not connected. We're recognizing that. Also too, Jennifer has been coordinating a lot with her other teammates related to the community input from the bike plan. The community has talked to Denver and said loud and clear, 1A is not our preferred. We have to go left, then we have to go north, then we have to go up and then right and then left again. Like, why can't we have a straight shot that's really prioritize us crossing? So on that, we are still currently evaluating different crossings if Birch remains disconnected. So we're looking again at this 1B. Can we cross again? That's more in alignment with the, at this location across Evans, 1C and 1D. So we are still evaluating those. And I think the nice thing is that since this is a planning effort, I'm not saying we can, kick the can down the road and ask our designers to figure it out, but we are looking at this to see what the best solution is. Next slide. The other idea is this option 2 with Birch. Can we reconnect them? And part of this, that one of the questions too that came up from our stakeholders is actually, could we even realign Birch on the south side? The answer is yes. And one of the things that will happen again in the future as this project moves forward is if either one of those properties redevelops and or through the right-of-way process, if it makes sense again to realign Birch Street to connect, we have that design option. Next slide. So this provides a cross section. So this is out of the helicopter airplane view. This is more on the street. This shows really option 1A. So it's having that off-street offset or disconnected Birch still. So it shows again, right now, the 1A alignment for the bike facility. It shows the new medians in, and as well as the amenity zones and the sidewalks. It's noted that this is, again, a smaller amenity zone with a level 3 of plantings, and it also shows that bus-only lane. And next slide. So now it's the time that, we can go back to the questions and discussions. So now this is what I just went through is the cadence of how I'm going to go through the other sections, and also as well as to pause at each section to have questions and discussions. Nora, can you help us out with this?
Yep. So we have a question related to removing that third lane. And that it sounds like a dangerous option as folks turn south. You're muted. I guess maybe you can revisit the thinking behind removing a bit behind the capacity to remove that third lane.
Yes. One of my teammates, Ray, I just saw her face pop on. Ray, did you have comments or thoughts on that?
Yeah, I guess are we about making us like a westbound to southbound left? Is that the area of concern?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, the thinking there is that actually removing that additional lane, if it's being underused, increases safety because we're limiting the amount of, well, we're shortening the distance, first of all, for pedestrians that need to cross that roadway, but we're also eliminating a lane takes away a conflict point. So if less vehicles are using that lane, then they can make that they just have less conflict points where they're turning into and coming into and out of. So I think that the concern with the westbound to southbound left might be around just concerns around lane merging. If I had to guess, I think that's maybe where that concern's coming from, and that taking away one less lane gives you one less lane to get over to turn left. So please, if I'm misinterpreting your concern, let me know. But from what we saw with the volumes out there, there just wasn't the demand for that. And with the what we're looking at on screen, where that lane drop would actually happen at Birch, we wouldn't anticipate that amount of conflict between two lanes. It just kind of right sizes the cross section to match what the rest of the corridor is looking like. And so keeping that consistent cross section also is a safety benefit.
Related to that question, in this segment, how in this scenario with the medians, how many left turns will no longer be allowed westbound going south?
Got it. I can answer that question slightly reversed, but it will be answering the question. I just pulled up the information right now. So you'd be able to head on to the I-25 South. And then there, let's see here, right in, right out access at Claremont. So that's on the south, that's heading eastbound, that's on the east side. Westbound, we would have, I think you're just at Birch and Colorado Boulevard, from what my information is telling me. So the access to go to, if you're westbound wanting to go into the neighborhood south, it would be at Birch and at Colorado.
Okay. We do have another question about this scenario of Evans at Colorado. If there is a narrowing towards Colorado Boulevard, and there is traffic on this corridor, is it likely to detect traffic to alternate routes, neighborhood routes?
The short answer is, well, it's not even a short answer. The longer answer is we did a lot of traffic modeling to evaluate the demand on this street. And with the added median, while we're taking away or proposing losing a lane in that westbound direction, we are still serving the current capacity on that roadway in the same way. So the median is not intended to have an impact to vehicles rerouting. We recognize this as a very this street has a lot of vehicle demand, and so the median is just to help make that demand be able to be facilitated safer.
Right, and again, what Ray had said about the modeling, there's 10,000 vehicles that drop off at I-25 east and west, particularly westbound. So right now, the demand is quite low for that third vehicle lane. And if we, and we again looked at the modeling and we did not see, because we actually looked, we thought there could be cut through traffic through the transit center, and we saw, I think, maybe 3 or 4 cars, again, in a model, go that route, but we did not see any other demand hit any of the other streets.
Thank you. There's a question from Jenny regarding bike crossing at Birch. Could it be as simple as moving the stop bar on the north side of Evans further east to align with Birch on the south?
Yeah, so if you go back, Alan, can you go back to the options slide? The slide before that. Yeah, so you can see 1B, 1C, 1D. So you can see again, that 1C talks about that realignment, the 1D as well. We have a median in there, so that's the 1D is kind of it is a zigzag. So just know we are evaluating these options right now to find the best solution.
And I would just add to that the reason 1A is where it is right now is just related to what that northeast corner looks like. So while we do want to try to make that path as contiguous as possible, right now there's not a sidewalk to support a multimodal activity on that side of the corridor, nor a curb ramp. And so there's just not the existing right away and infrastructure to support that realignment, which is why we have the folks over on the west side of Evans. And just I saw that, I'm stealing your thunder, Nora, but I saw Jenny's additional question on bike routes here about how bikes get to the crossing at Birch northbound. And Alan, if you can go back to our rendering, what's not shown in this plan, but is happening through a different project, is that there's a Birch Street bikeway project. So while it is a little bit zigzagged on the south leg of Birch, there's additional traffic calming features planned, and that's a planned neighborhood bikeway. So the intent is that they would come up that south leg of Birch, make a turn onto that wider sidewalk area that would be wide enough to support both bikes and peds to get over to the west leg of Evans to make that crossing. Again, we know that that's an indirect path and less ideal, but just trying to, this design is kind of considering the existing plan place and then the limitations with the lack of sidewalk on the lack of sidewalk and curb ramp currently on that northeast corner of Birch and Evans.
We have one last question from Jenny, and then we'll move on to the next section. But did this planning effort take into consideration the coming increase in density between Colorado Boulevard and I-25?
Where is the density? So we know about the service station on Colorado Evans. Is it on where? Maybe? Which location are we thinking about, Jenny?
I would, while we're sorting that out,
Kmart
just
redevelopment. Which is
from a
which is much further east, I believe.
Oh,
Okay,
is that
I
the
would-
one that just occurred at Monaco?
I think it's even further east than that. I think some of, let me just
We
point
can
out
look
that
into it.
the bike facility on Birch and this intersection we know is an important location for folks. So this is definitely something the conversation will continue. These are options. I saw the comment about the alignment with what was in the area plan for sure. And then, you know, whatever happens next, be it across the street, on Evans itself, the design for this will evolve to be, I don't know, the most responsive we can be. Like I said, and it's been said, like 1A is not awesome. but it's better than what's there. And so hopefully over the next bit of time, we'll have the chance to develop an intersection design that is, how do I say, more palatable to folks. So this is kind of a next step from the Southeast Area Plan, and we'll continue.
And one of the things that I will note on our project webpage, we have posted a whole area for frequently asked questions. So one of the things that we can do is questions that we don't have the answers to right now. We can take those and then put them in the frequently asked questions area of the webpage.
And just
go ahead, Mary.
to respond to the density question, I guess just wanted to state that when we were considering traffic volumes, in case we're talking about density from the standpoint of vehicles, we were very aware of the vehicle demand on Evans, which is why we did not explore, or kind of early on in the process, as Eileen indicated, we did not continue conversations about a lane drop, recognizing that this roadway needs to continue to serve that capacity. So just to be cognizant of the vehicle demand there as density continues to be increased.
And I see the note that came in. It's the south side of Evans, east of Colorado townhomes. One of the things, again, we have the options in the plan for between Birch and Colorado. I will also note that crossing, that signalized crossing, that would be in Ash, that's a key point to, again, providing access for all different modes of transportation. So once we have that, there's safe access to access the Colorado Transit Station, which again provides many options, light rail, buses, even by CDOT buses, as well as with hopefully development and happenings there by RTD and the redevelopment of the parking lot. All right, I think related to time, we do need to move forward. All right, and this one is a short and sweet one. It focuses specifically on the I-25 interchange. Next slide. So really, when we were out on the street, as well as from what we heard the community, is that this whole area felt unsafe for a variety of reasons. One, we're looking to address that by increasing the pedestrian areas. I also want to recognize that the I-25 area is a bridge structure. So on that, we don't have a lot of opportunities for planting and turning this into a large green space just because it's a bridge structure. But we are able to include pedestrian area or increase the pedestrian areas. So that also will reduce the turning radii of cars. We have tested out and are doing this to Denver standards related to trucks and buses. But again, it's really to make it safer, that cars are moving slower, and as well as providing more space for people. There's a new crossing on the west side. The level of green is essentially a minimum until when we get to the actual Evans side of the street. Signal timing would be upgraded. This is when there is the new introduction of that bus only westbound lane at I-25 Birch. Next slide. So this is, again, the helicopter view. So we would be looking to have lighting improvements in addition to the extended pedestrian areas. So you can kind of barely see, it does not look like much improvements, but these are significant improvements. So we would, again, be really shortening those crossing distance for people needing to walk in this area. That a lot of people, again, walk to and from east and west, the transit center, and to access other services in the area. Next slide. And this slide provides that three-dimensional perspective. You can see, again, we've proposed some planters on the bridge structure in this area. And you can also see that's the introduction of the bus only lane. You can also see, again, the median on the west side of this area. So we would have improved pedestrian and crossing and ADA access there. Next slide. Questions and discussions about this section of the proposed corridor vision?
We don't have any questions popping up in the chat about this particular segment.
All right, we can keep moving forward, and if questions come back up, we can do that.
We do have a late breaking question
Okay.
from Mark. Enhanced safety is a great objective, but how are the safety gains calculated?
Yeah, sure. I can explain that.
measure?
So the best thing about being in transportation is we aren't the first ones to do this. Maybe we are, maybe there's some breaking design that we're inventing. But a lot of this has been tested, not only tested, but put in and measured at different places. And one of the things, again, going back to our website, and we can post some more information, a lot of these design improvements that we're suggesting and we're relating and connecting to safety are the United States Department of Transportation, USDOT, and the Federal Highway Administration. They have done all of the research and measures of and have proven data of the crash reduction picture for all crashes, for fatal crashes, for different types of crashes. So for medians, for instance, we actually have that percentage that it's anticipated to reduce crashes overall and reduce fatality and serious injuries, as well as with bus-only lanes, extensions of the pedestrian area to shorten that turning radius. So we do have that information, and I think that's a great area to put in our FAQs about the designs that we're proposing and the anticipated results for improving safety.
We also do, in some cases, before and afters. And so once it's in, you can capture the same data we captured right now, and really see what difference it made, or in the unfortunate circumstance, it might not make. But yeah, between the data that's out there and our double check, we can back check what we're doing is right.
We do have a comment from Elizabeth who says, I'm pleased by the bus lane here. It should keep the 46 and the 21 on schedule. Getting stuck behind cars when you can see Colorado Station in the distance is frustrating.
Understand. And also one of the things that we learned is the CDOT Bustang, their route uses this, they come off southbound I-25, make a left heading west to access Birch into the Colorado Station. So again, it's not only the locals, it's also again the regional needs to supporting transit. All right, so we're gonna move from I-25 to Holly. I will note one of the things that Jennifer mentioned, you can go to the next slide, early on, is about undersized lane widths. I don't believe I'm speaking to people that don't drive this corridor. I live in the neighborhood as well. This section between I-25 and Holly has the narrowest vehicle lanes. There's a vehicle lane at Grape that's 7.5 feet wide. That is fully undersized, does not meet even, again, the dimensions of a minimum of a vehicle lane, which is a minimum of 9 feet. So on that, we recognizing that this is the most constrained area from curb to curb. So again, where that existing street is, and then also one of the most constrained areas behind the curb and that limited sidewalk and adjacent to properties. So on that, the treatments here for the pedestrian, for the sidewalk and the amenity zone, it's a mix of both that preferred and minimum application. So again, it's a minimum application is 8-foot sidewalk and a 5-foot amenity zone. The preferred is 10-foot sidewalk and an 8-foot amenity zone. The level of green is low, it's a level 3, and there's actually not a recommended amenity zone between I-25 and Dahlia due to that property constraints, and it's actually right now that existing building. So there is one area that does not have a recommendation. We're looking to upgrade signal timings at all signals, upgrade and relocate a handful of bus stops, and then put in new medians and access management. Next slide. So again, we're going to be in the helicopter view, kind of traversing the areas. So you can see here is that I would say at Dahlia, this would be signal timing upgrade. We recognize The left turn arrow is not on right now, accessing south, heading westbound from Dahlia. We do want to turn that on, hopefully in the short term. We're looking to, again, add curb extensions to tighten, or again, to make the pedestrian area shorter, as well as a turning radius for cars and vehicles, so it slows them down. You can also see that we're adding in upgrading bus stops, so we're creating room and ensuring that there's a safe and accessible ADA compliant place for people to wait. And also as well, you'll see that we are adding medians. So one of the questions that may come up related to the other section, so we would have access at Dahlia for all turning movements. You can see east on the right side of this picture, there is access as well to this area and then further east that we'll go into. Next slide. Next slide. This is kind of, again, between Dahlia and Grape. And you can see on the south side, we have a preferred application. So you can see the wider amenity zone, a wider sidewalk. On the north side, on the street, we have a smaller amenity zone and a smaller sidewalk with a consistent median. Next slide. Grape, you can see that we're adding in the median adjacent on the left side. And again, it provides that protected area for people needing to access, to walk across the street and access the bus stop. You can also see that we've shifted the eastbound bus stop to be in a more safer space than it is prior to Grape. So we're recommending that movement and as well as a median. And so this shows, again, that 3D perspective of Evans at Holly. So upgrading the traffic signal, adding in a new median with a safe space for people crossing, as well as you can see the level 3 amenity zones and sidewalks. And any questions and discussions related to this section? In the next section, we will specifically talk about Holly.
No questions at this time.
And I will note before we move on to the other sections, and one of the things that will come up in implementation, hopefully maybe people have seen, this has registered. If not, I'll point it out. Every one of these renderings, there's no utilities. We are hoping that with our implementation steps, that with the right-of-way process, once that has gone through, that we will be able to bury the utility line, the overhead utility lines underground. And that again those would be buried in the amenity zone.
We do have a quick comment from Jared indicating that the median near Grape could challenge turns for the High Line as it backs up at Hudson.
Thank you for that comment.
Mm-hmm.
And we have when we have gone out, the project team has gone out for pickup drop-off observations at for the Highline Academy.
Mm-hmm.
We can let us look into that comment and question about to see if we think that there's going to be that continuation, the residual backup.
John does ask, will lanes be widened at this location?
Yes, I apologize for not mentioning that. I can put, I need to put that note in here. So yes, the street here, the curb to curbs would be wider and that pavement allocated to correct the undersized vehicle lanes. So they would all be sized to standards.
We have two questions about the amenity zone. Who takes care of them? And on an arterial like this, don't they get really beat up?
By the plowing and the dusting and everything like that.
I can take
Um,
that.
Do you want to take that, Jennifer?
Yeah. So yeah, we've been hearing since the very beginning that folks are worried about the medians, and I totally get it. As far as who takes care of them, it really depends. It turns out that all sorts of divisions of the city do. So you might have green infrastructure, you might have parks, you might have Dottie, and it really does depend. So as we think about the medians, there wouldn't be plantings in the medians. So it's really maintenance that happens with Dottie operations if someone like crashes into it and we need to replace the concrete. If it's the plantings in the buffer, likely green infrastructure, but maybe parks. And yeah, we've been trying to understand the snow problem. It's not a new problem for this design. It's something that we see everywhere. And so it's a little bit about plant selection and then kind of ongoing care. But yeah, highly aware that that's a concern, totally understand because of the stuff they put on the roads and the danger, I guess, it poses for doing something out here and what it could look like year after year.
Casey asks about Dahlia. Are you going to add a left turn protected signal for those traveling northbound on Dahlia turning onto Evans?
Yes, that is the short answer. I will note, the last community event we had, it was at the Highline Academy. We had parents, administrators begging us, pleading their case over and over, saying, can you just turn on that left signal? It's there, it's not blinking, it's not protected. So the short answer is yes. We have looked, it meets quote warrants, it meets the need to turn it on. So we're hoping once the study is complete with that recommendation, we can move that forward to a work order and turn that on. I will also note, I want to, not that I don't want to put other questions in the FAQs, we will definitely put this one in the FAQ part of the webpage, and hopefully by the end of October, put a date or a month that we could turn that on.
We do have another question about amenity zones. Are they irrigated?
Yes, to establish, or maybe it's irrigated by truck. And over time, they're weaned off. So with the plantings are selected specifically to not need the water. I mean, we know where we live. It's arid. We're moving towards something that's really more Colorado centric in our approach to plant selection and also care. So ultimately, the goal is no, that they're not. That they're also designed in such a way that they could get the runoff from the street, and that would be enough.
We do have a question from John about density at Holly and Monaco, so maybe I'll let you move on to that next section.
Sounds good. Also, I will note, related to density, and one of the things, again, we're the collective, I would say, overarching vision. If we take a step back from this study in itself, the near southeast plan, with the rezoning and things like that, they're trying to, again, with the Evans corridor plan and the near southeast plan, is to try to create more of a place where people can feel comfortable getting out of their cars because they want to go to a restaurant, or they want to walk over and get their flowers at Bonnie Bray, or walk down to the taco truck and grab some lunch or dinner. So on that, one of the things is that we're really looking at that, creating Evans as a safe place. Overall, really between I-25 and Quebec, we are not recommending to remove a travel lane. We are also not recommending to add a lane. And I think that, again, aligns with the values and the goals of the overarching project. All right, Holly to Monaco. So one of the things to note is very similar to the previous corridor sections, is that the application for the pedestrian amenity as green too, it varies. This section does have a lot of storm drains, so we are able to move up to level 4 and 5, and that's where you'll see some trees enter the picture. In this area, again, we're doing all signal timing upgrades at the current signals, as well as upgrading, relocating buses. We've got that median application. The other area here in this corridor that we want to talk through is the new Hawk. And again, a Hawk is a signalized crossing that's pedestrian actuated. So if someone needs it, and it's going to be at Layden. And that really speaks to a lot of that, I would say, sibling bus stops that are on that east and westbound side. Right now, people just walk across as well too. There's a lot of housing and residential that's on the south side of Evans, that's just behind the commercial area. And there's a lot of commercial activity that people want to go to on the north side. There's a thrift store, there's restaurants, and other commercial activity that people need to get to. So right now, there's just people crossing at Layden on Evans, kind of risking their lives. Next slide. So starting off at Holly, we do want to recognize that Holly, as of right now, if you open up any other type of bike plan, does not have Holly designated as a bike route or a bike facility. Yet the community as well, this is I live in the neighborhood, this is the street I ride. If I'm on my bike, and I need to head north, I'm riding on Holly. It tends to be, it definitely is one more of the lower stress streets, because you have a lot of that on-street parking. It's when you get to Evans, things definitely get scrambled. The level of stress feeling gets very high for all users, people walking, taking the bus there, riding their bikes, and as well as with people driving their cars. It's tight, but I also want to recognize is that we still need to do work at this intersection. We can't leave this intersection as is. It's not safe for people walking and biking. And it's coming up that the bicycle plan for Denver is recommending this as a bike route. So know that we are still working on this actively of how to best address it. We did look at an option to remove a lane in the north and southbound section to see if we could, again, add in that protected facility. Vehicles, it was not a good, did not look good from turning movements and things like that. So we have been testing options, have not found the right solution just yet, but that does not mean that there is not one out there. Here, again, you're going to see from the pedestrian perspective, you're going to see wide sidewalks, amenity zones, as well as we're recommending to relocate the bus stop. Right now it's on the other side of Holly. We want it to be on the east side of Holly and upgraded to make sure it's ADA compliant. And John, again, we're not recommending that right now. We tested it. And again, the results were not favorable for a lot of reasons. Here from Jasmine to Layden, you'll see, again, we're upgrading the bus stop, adding in medians, that consistent sidewalk and amenity zone. At Layden, that's where we're adding in the signalized crossing for people needing to cross, again, to access commercial activities as well as a safe place for people to catch their eastbound and westbound buses. Next slide. Here, I will note, this is one of the only areas on the corridor that reaches a level 5 for green infrastructure. And this relates to, again, there's storm drains and kind of those outfalls north and south of the corridor. And you can see here, the lanes remain consistent as they currently are, upgrading the bus stops, one that's currently just improved, related to the gas station, and as well as those consistent sidewalk and amenity zones. And then here's the 3D or that cross-section visual of what this could look like. This is at Layden, and this would be including the new Hawk crossing. Again, it's a signalized intersection, having that, again, safer place for people to walk and cross, as well as you can see the 10-foot sidewalks, the 8-foot amenity zones. And again, since we have level 5 green infrastructure and 4 trees can be planted. Next slide. Whoops. All right, so we are at the questions and discussion part, and I see some questions that have come up.
Yes. This is a question related to businesses that operate on the south side with a new median in place. Are UIs allowed? Will it be safe to make a U-turn to scooch around and go back west to access businesses?
I'm wondering if I can tag in my teammate Ray to help answer this question. And I will note, like on Hamden, Boulevard, where recent meetings were put in, they do allow U-turns at certain signalized intersections. And then they also have, sorry, my light keeps shutting on and off. They also have restrictions to for U-turns. Ray, is there anything else? And so with this, could there be U-turns at the signalized intersections to, again, turn around and access the businesses on the south side?
Yeah, one of the challenges there is just that with only 2 vehicle lanes, and as Eileen mentioned, there's some substandard lane widths in there as well. We did run some vehicle tracking to just see if that would be possible, and it's just to make that turn happen. It takes a very small passenger car to facilitate that movement. So at intersections, it's something that we can explore further. And at intersections that have a protected left turn phase, it's possible that we could not exclusively stripe it to prevent U-turns from happening, but it would be limited to only passenger cars, and it would definitely be necessary to have that protected left turn phase, just because we're working with a 2-lane street that's already pretty constrained as opposed to a 3-lane wide. When I say 3-lane, I mean 3 lanes in each direction. So it's a little bit location dependent, and something that we can definitely flesh out more in final design.
It's also something that we would, as this advances to design, right? I love your optimism, right, that we go to final design. But during that, we look at like, what does business access look like? And this is the most optimal situation regarding crashes and high injury network. When it comes down to design, there's a little bit of give and take, right? So we know our vision, but we also know that practical reality starts to play a role. So know that this will morph. So don't fall in love with this design. I mean, do, because then you can advocate for it, but don't, because it may not be quite this when we get it constructed.
Yeah, that's a great point, Jen. And a lot of our cross-section examples here where we've got this nice pretty picture aren't at the mid-block location, so we don't see it as much, but we have identified a couple kind of key areas that we think should have that median break to facilitate access. And so that access management plan is certainly a next step.
Thank you.
Related to medians, can the eastbound left turn lane onto Holly be longer?
We will take that into
Yes.
consideration.
It can be. I think if we've got the width for the median, that's something that we have a lot of flexibility to play around with. So again, another step in the design process is that a traffic study would be done to size those turn lanes to make sure that that turn lane is sized appropriately to store the number of vehicles that are making that turning movement. And those details would definitely be incorporated into the next stage of design before anything was constructed.
It sounds like you might have the same answer for this too. Somebody asked about turning onto Holly northbound from Evans eastbound. Is there a way to put in a turn lane to facilitate that turn onto Holly?
Is that the one? Let me see here. Is that the one with UPS?
Yes.
USP?
Yeah.
Is there any way to work with United States Postal Service to put in a turn lane from Evans to North Holly? Oh, to widen to have a singular right?
Yeah, I think that's the intent. Yeah.
Yeah. Evans West to North Holly. So right now, I will say our design is not recommending dedicated right turn lanes at intersections. And or to widen intersections, yet that doesn't, and we can also look at the current demand for that right turn. And again, part of this is getting through the plan, the corridor vision to move to design, and that's where further analysis, but we can note that as a comment to look into further.
Thanks, Eileen. Those are the comments on this section.
Got it. I will note, I see Walt and Mary Kay has mentioned something about driveway consolidation. Jen, did we put driveway cut consolidation into our? Okay, let's see here. One of the things about driveway consolidation is that there is a process at Denver. And it's related to driveways that are, how close or far away are they from signalized intersections, as well as is there enough access points and or too many access points to and from a business. As part of that, one of the things that we did not do, if you look at the corridor that we're going through, we did not consolidate any driveways yet. I'm going to say yet, because when this project does move forward into design, it will look and start assessing all the driveways to ensure it meets Denver's requirements. And again, the Denver requirements for driveways are the proximity to from intersections, to from bus stops as well. You have to have a safe place for people to get on and off a bus, as well as a vehicle to stop there. As well as, again, is there too little or too many access points into a singular commercial business and or property? So those three factors will be taken into in the next stage. All right, we're going to move forward to the last segment of the corridor, which is going from Monaco to Quebec. And a lot of this, again, is going to be similar to what we've talked about so far with the corridor vision. Next one. Again, mix of both preferred and minimum application of sidewalks and amenity zone. You can see the level of green. We have the opportunity to be at 4 or 5. We're upgrading all the signals for timing, as well as upgrading, relocating some bus stops. We've got that new median. As well, there is a recommendation to put in a new hawk signal at Pontiac Street. We also want to recognize that the improvements done nearest to Quebec that have been recently installed, that was an Arapahoe County project. So we are recommending some changes to that project that was just installed. But again, it's really to ensure the goals of this project for putting people and mobility and safety first, as well as kind of greening the street. So next slide. All right, moving east of Monaco. Again, a lot of the future development, which if you have not driven by, walked on, they have met our complete street standards, those design guidelines. So I think this is a really great example of the new development that just went in here, both on Monaco and on Evans. Those are the requirements that came out of the complete street. So I feel as if that's a really great look and feel of what the amenity zone and sidewalk can be. I will note that the utilities are still overhead because we need, again, a very long section to start undergrounding. And just, we can't do it kind of singularly property to property. You'll see on the north side that there is no amenity zone as related to some parts of this property. And that goes back to the interface as it stands today with the building, the existing buildings. There is no room. Again, trying to get those sidewalks in, which work. I will say there is that one building that's kind of set in front and center here, that we are still at a very minimum amount of sidewalk. I think we're only at 5 feet, which is the existing condition. And you can see, again, the medians come into play as well. Next slide. The next slide, we focused specifically on Oneida. You can see, again, we're extending the curbs and improving those. So we have better access for people walking, biking, as well as we're adding in an upgraded bus stop, providing space for people to access that bus stop safely. And as well, one of the things that has come out of previous bike plans, as well as community input, is really supporting Oneida as a bike corridor and looking to add in bike lanes for this intersection. All right, we're at the end of the corridor. Our recommendations here, some of them are in that existing median. It was put in by Arapahoe County. We are recommending, and this would take time and coordination with Arapahoe County, that we do put in a new signal related to that Pontiac. One of the areas that we saw over and over again, being on the street, driving the street, even on transit, is people with accessing that transit stop and even the corner stores and the residential facilities on the south side, they walk over the street and they now have a raised median that they can stand and see where they can cross, because they're getting to and from the bus stops and the gas station without having to go down to Quebec. So on that, we are recommending to put a hawk crossing again at Pontiac, so we can allow people to safely walk and access the other side of Evans. And this is an overview that's closer to Monaco. Again, one of the areas that this is by the new development at Newport Street. What's not included are the trees that were put into the amenity zone, but you can also see that the new median, the proposed medians are part of this visual. All right, and we are at the end of the corridor overview. So questions, discussions about improvements from Monaco to Quebec.
So Jenny asks about Oneida Street and wonders why there isn't a painted bike lane on Oneida at that north-south crossing across Evans.
Yeah.
Protected lane or buffered bike lane.
Yeah. The painted green paint, I don't think it was intentional, and let's put that in our design. Thanks for the feedback.
Yay, says
Yeah.
Jen.
All right, the next part of this, Jennifer is gonna take it back over and talk through the next steps when it comes to implementation of the next steps for this project. Jen?
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so what happens next? I know that's the question on everyone's mind. I am sure Councilman Cashman is very curious how we advance this, given it took 5 years to get to this point. So the goal would be to find funding for design, and at the same time be thinking about funding for right-of-way and really a funding plan for construction. So design likely takes 2 years, give or take. Right-of-way takes 2 years, give or take, maybe longer. Turns out there's a lot of parcels that would need to be touched on this corridor. And then construction is probably 18 months. So, you know, best case, we've got like a 6-year window to be thinking about this, but all of it really starts with that step one and coming up with that funding strategy. From there, and sort of once we find funding to do it, we get into design, utilities, all of the things that have come up in this conversation continue. We come up with a maintenance strategy, and this will be ongoing as well. So there's a lot of partners in this process, and really bringing them along from design forward, knowing full well that like we're doing the plan, I'm gonna hand it off to my designers, and then after construction, it gets handed off to maintenance, and making sure that the maintenance teams are part of the original discussion, because it'll be theirs to maintain. And we don't want to do anything, if we can help it, that doesn't work long term, because it's expensive and that would be just wasteful. We've got a right-of-way process to begin, and we really don't get into that till 60% design. And I realize that's jargony, but you need to know a certain bit about the corridor and about the design before you can start looking at what right-of-way is needed. So once you do that, it's about 2 years. And the last bullet, we've coordinated with Excel really from the beginning, because we've known undergrounding is a big thing. So we worked with them, we've got a map of where all the things are. It's really insane to look at. So now it's like, hey, we want to do this. Turns out there's a fund that the city sort of coordinates with utility on to help get the undergrounding done, because it's not cheap, but it's something that Excel partners with us in. So ongoing coordination with them, aligning those funds and availability. Step 3, we complete that right-of-way process, we complete utilities, we kick off right away, we start undergrounding, and then we get all the way to step 4, which would be really awesome to be able to say, we started this project in 2024 and we're looking to be done in 2034, give or take. Really don't know. But that next step is construction, and I hope y'all come to my groundbreaking, and then we put a ribbon across the street when we're done, and we all, you know, bike or whatever we do. So I'm looking forward to step 4, although it's going to be a little while. So things that influence when and where. there are a lot of moving parts. I know we say that at the city a lot because it seems to take a long time to get things done, but there really are. We've got to find funding. And so this effort we're doing right now came about because Councilman Cashman and Councilman Black came up with money to do it. And were it not for their, I don't even know if you call it a set aside, if it were not for their identification of funds, this would have happened, but years from now. So what we need to do is figure out that next step. And one of the things that Eileen's team is working on is, what does that next step cost? What is right away going to cost? What is construction going to cost? Because from there we can say, what funding sources can we use to get it done? The other hat I wear for the city is funding, so I'm very interested in what we do next. Right away will take, it averages about 2 years. It may be longer. We have a lot of parcels that will be touched. So 2 years is average. Development and redevelopment, cool thing about what's going on in the corridor now is a lot of what we envision can happen even before we do like an official right-of-way or reconstruction process, because the guidance that's out there gets the preferred sidewalk and the preferred buffer built. So you'll see it happen in bits and pieces. This project would complete the whole 2 miles when we get it done. I noted we've got partners, a lot of partners. So CDOT over the I-25 interchange, but also Colorado Bus Rapid Transit. It was in the paper, it's coming. It's one of CDOT's projects that anticipates being done by 2030. So we will work with them on what Evans needs to look like at that intersection. RTD, obviously they've got that parcel at Colorado, the RTD station. What is that going to look like? Is it always going to be a parking lot? I don't know. So maybe that's an opportunity to really coordinate some of the work we see in that section. Arapahoe County just did that wonderful project on the east end that we want to influence and change. So we need their help. And then undergrounding, obviously utilities. There are a lot of them out there. And so we need to coordinate with all of them. And really that's bringing them along. So meeting with them every step, and that'll be much more intense during the design process. And then if this isn't enough, let's add our upcoming sidewalk program. So that would be that 307 proposition that funds sidewalks. And how can we, honestly, it's how can we use that to help advance Evans? And I think there's a really good opportunity there. And that may change how we pay for it too. So if, depending on how sidewalk money comes in, maybe it's a less expensive project. Don't know. Parks and Rec, we've got that green space on the north side, pretty much from I-25 to Dahlia, right? That's right now nothing. It's CDOT owned. Parks is interested. It's going to be in our Greenway plan, which is coming up. So that could be a thing. And then transit. Obviously, we have a transit plan. We're working on transit design guidelines. If you didn't know, we just kicked that off. We have a vision of Evans as a medium capacity transit corridor, which doesn't mean we're taking a lane, but it does mean we upgrade, we really enhance signal timing to facilitate bus movement. We know the corridor is going to get more congested over time. So let's amp up our bus service to begin to take some of that traffic away and try to balance the need. So partnering with RTD, they run the buses, but also we have our own vision and program. So we need to coordinate across within Dottie and also then outside of Dottie. And then I love this. So what else? And I think this is where we're looking to you guys at this meeting and future. What else? We've heard public art along the corridor, placemaking. I would love to see this corridor become a place, not just a through. Broadway has some signage and some very whimsical art pieces now. Could that be on Evans? A green corridor. It is terrible out there. So ensuring that the green really runs the extents of it. The Near Southeast Area Plan talked about a mobility hub at Monaco. So we know those bus stops are really high transit boarding and alighting. A mobility hub includes scooters and bikes. And so how maybe there's an opportunity there to supplement the last mile based on the usage of those two stops. And then, whatever TOD is coming, and with Colorado bus rapid transit coming, what's going on with RTD, really any transit-oriented development benefits because it helps balance the modes and the users on the roadway. So, I mean, that one is a city priority, but, you know, it's one we didn't want to get lost. So what else? You know, is there other things? Yes. There is a 1% fund for art that that is required of any project for the city over, I want to say $1 million. And that is whole. So we've already spent 500,000. Well, we will, I think. Construction, we're in the 40s. We will definitely meet that 1%. So I think then the trick is, what do we do with it? Could it be something that we theme? I mean, and this goes way beyond this project, but you know, maybe we do a call for art. Maybe we use our bus stops and we showcase that way. I think there's tons of ways to make Evans a place that wouldn't suck to walk. And that's not just wider sidewalks. It's a place that speaks to you and doesn't say go away, you know? So in the chat, please put what else, if there is anything else. Here's our, like, the URL for, we've got a questionnaire survey. We've got some work to do. We're working on those estimates because we really need to know what we're getting into as we advance this. There's in-person opportunities at Cook Park on October 7, so Monday, 3 to 5, and then Virginia Village Library, sorry, October 15 from 3 to 5. And I think we will have, I love the murals idea. And just before you made me think, Mark, we had talked about maybe art on the bridge using extra space. And so keep putting those ideas in there. There are going to be folks at these locations at Cook Park and Virginia Village with a roll plot who would take your ideas down. So if something comes to you and you don't feel like shooting us an email, go chat with my very awesome team and we can work that into the final plan. Thank you for coming. I think we had almost 40 people here tonight, which is phenomenal. Thank you to my team, who I definitely couldn't have done it without you. The website will be updated with all the materials this week, maybe?
It's actually already updated.
Yes. Okay, so everything you saw here, if you really want to go back and dive in, it's up there already, plus that survey. We'd love to hear from you, you know, as you get a chance. And my email's there, please reach out.
And I will note again, keep this bit.ly, mark it, grab it, take a picture of it from this. Probably give us about a week or so to update the FAQs. And then also we'll be taking input from those 2 community meetings.
How long is input open, Eileen? I forgot to ask you.
The survey will be open until the 18th.
Oh, perfect. Okay.
So 2 weeks. And then again, we'll be at Cook Park on Monday, and then we'll be at the library the following week on the 15th.
Okay, so I just want to answer Casey's question. How will we know when, if design funds have been acquired? The budget book. And so I know the document is a wonderful read. If you're really interested in city processes, it would be a line item in there. If we win a grant for it, it'll be in the news. And I mean, ultimately that budget book is really the resource, but if we get design, it'll be probably published on the website, or you'll start to see next step meetings, things like that.
Councilman Cashman, do you want to close this out?
Yeah, thank you very much. Just wanted to thank the team again, both staff and consultants, but mainly the residents who showed up tonight to contribute, you know, their intimate knowledge of the corridor to make this plan better. That's what it takes to really get something that serves the community well. And as far as how you'll know when we get the next phase of funding is, I'll be dancing down the middle of Evans Avenue. I'll post that in my newsletters so you can come out and cheer.
Excellent.
Thank you all.
Thank you all. Have a good evening.
Good evening.